Hello friends, welcome to Premier UPSC IAS. So today we are starting with the environment and ecology part of the Prelims UPSC IAS. So in this lecture we are going to cover all the topics related to environment and ecology. Remember, this is only for prelims, so I am only taking the brief part of the topic. The detailed part for mains will be covered in a different lecture, hopefully. What is environment? The environment may be defined as the surroundings or conditions in which an organism lives or operates. Every living organism is constantly interacting with its environment, comprised of air, light, water, land, or substratum, and various kinds of living organisms. The environment broadly includes living and non living components. All organisms depend on their environment for survival. Ecology. What is ecology? Ecology is defined as a scientific study of the relationship of the living organisms with each other and with their environment. The term ecology was first coined in 1869 by the German biologist Ernst Haeckel. It has been derived from the Greek words oikos, meaning home, or estate, and logos, meaning study. The emphasis is on relationships between organisms and the components of the environment, namely non living and living. Types of study: study of the form, physiology, behavior, distribution, and adaptation of organism in relation to the environment. Study of interaction between populations and intraspecific relationships. Study of structure and composition of the community and interspecific interactions between members of the community. Study of the community in relation to the structure of its ecosystem, nutrient cycling, climate, energy flow, etc. are studied. Levels of ecological organization. Hence, ecology not only deals with the study of the relationship of individual organisms with their environment, but also with the study of populations, communities, ecosystems, biomes, and biosphere as a whole. Individual organism is a living being that has the ability to act or function independently. A population is a group of individuals, usually of the same species, occupying a defined area during a specific time frame. Communities are usually named after the dominant species. A community is not fixed or rigid as it changes with time. Organism, individual, basic unit of the study. Second step is the hierarchy of ecosystem, basically the population, a group of organisms consisting of a number of different populations but same species that live in defined area and interact with each other. Community, a group of organisms consisting of a number of different species that live in an area and interact with each other. Ecosystem, a communities of organisms and this their physical environment interacting as an ecological unit. Biome, a large community unit characterized by a major vegetation type and associated fauna found in a specific climatic region is a biome. So this is the whole situation of the ecosystem. You can see ecosystem in the middle. It starts with the organism at the lower level, then population, then community, then ecosystem, and then there is biome and biosphere. Biosphere. Plant and animal kingdom together make biosphere or the living world. It is a narrow zone of the earth where land, water, and air interact with each other to support life. So you can see among the three aspects of like hydrosphere, atmosphere, and lithosphere, that is water, air, and land respectively, that part which is having interaction from three components will be called as biosphere. Biome. It is the terrestrial part of the biosphere which can be divided into enormous regions called biomes. Biomes are characterized by climate, vegetation, animal life, and general soil type. For example, tundra, taiga, desert, etc. No two biomes are alike, that is, all biomes are unique in nature. The most important climatic factors determining biomes are the following two: temperature, precipitation. What is species? A species is defined as a group of similar populations of organisms whose members are capable of interbreeding and to produce the fertile offspring children. For example, human, tiger, lion, lotus, rose, dog, etc. Every species has a specific scientific name understood by people of all over the world. For example, humans belong to the species of Homo sapiens. Every species has its own set of genetic characteristics that makes the species unique and different from other species. However, variations are produced as a result of chance, mutation among the species, and competition and natural selection determine as to which variation will succeed and survive. Those variations that enable a species to survive in the struggle for existence are encouraged and promoted. Therefore, those offspring which are suited to their immediate environment have a better chance of surviving, reaching reproductive age, and passing on the suitable adaptations to their progeny. Hence, adaptation and diversity of the species is a result of evolution. Habitat. Habitat is the physical environment in which an organism lives. Each organism has particular requirements for its survival and lives where the environment provides for those needs. The human gut is the habitat of a tapeworm, and the rotting log a habitat of a fungus. A habitat may support many different species having similar requirements. For example, a single ocean habitat may support a whale, a seahorse, seal, phytoplankton, and many other kinds of organisms. Structural components of a habitat are food, water, shelter or cover, and the space. Ecological niche. The term niche, or sometimes pronounced as niche, the term niche means the sum of all the activities and relationships of a species by which it uses the resources in its habitat for its survival and reproduction. In nature, many species occupy the same habitat, but they perform different functions. The functional characteristics of a species in its habitat are referred to as niche. In that common habitat of a species is like its address, that is, where it lives, whereas niche can be thought of as its profession, that is, activities and responses specific to the species. A niche is unique for a species. While many species share the habitat, no two species in a habitat can have the same niche. This is because if two species occupy the same niche, they will compete with one another until one is displaced. For example, a large number of different species of insects may be pests of the same plant, but they can coexist as they feed on different parts of the same plant. The most important resources in the niche of animals are food and shelter, while in the case of plants, they are moisture and nutrients, phosphorus and nitrogen. Types of niche. Habitat niche, where the organism lives. Food niche, where what it eats or decompose and which species compete with the organism. Reproductive niche, how and when it reproduces. Physical and chemical niche, land shape, land slope, temperature, humidity, and other requirements. Adaptation. Every organism is suited to live in its particular habitat, hence, it is adapted to its particular environment. An adaptation is thus the appearance or behavior or structure or mode of life of an organism that allows it to survive in a particular environment. For example, the presence of gills and fins in fishes to aquatic habitats. Similarly, in aquatic flowering plants, absence of wood formation and highly reduced root system are adaptations to aquatic environments. Adaptations have a genetic basis and have been produced and perfected through evolution. This means that the adaptations have developed over many generations to help a species survive successfully in its environment. However, following are some examples of basic adaptations that help animals and plants to survive in their respective environments. Shape of bird's beak, the thickness or thinness of fur, presence of feathers and wings in birds, evergreen and deciduous nature of trees, presence and absence of thorns on leaves and stems. Extinction. Extinction is generally a natural occurrence. It means the dying out of a variety of or a species. Extinction occurs when species cannot evolve fast enough to cope with the changes taking place in their environment. The primary reason for these extinctions is environmental change or biological competition. Many species have gone extinct during the geological history of the Earth. Extinction may take place due to catastrophic natural phenomena such as tsunami, volcanoes, etc. In recent times, human activities such as deforestation, overexploitation, environmental pollution, and environmental change are other factors responsible for the extinction. Biotic community. In ecology, the term community or more appropriately biotic community refer to the populations of different kinds of organisms living together and sharing the same habitat. An important attribute of a community is its species diversity. Species diversity influences the stability of the community. A stable community is one which is able to return to its original condition after being disturbed in some way. Communities with high species diversity have been found to be comparatively more stable. Biotic interactions. These interactions occur between the organisms and is fundamental for its survival and functioning of the ecosystems as a whole. The interaction that occurs among the different individuals of the same species is called as intraspecific interaction, while the interaction among the individuals of different species in a community is termed as interspecific interaction. Interspecific relationship may be direct and close as between a lion and a deer, or indirect and remote as between an elephant and a beetle. Types of interactions. Few are negative, few are positive, and few are neutral. Negative. At least one of the species is harmed in amensalism, in predation, in parasitism, and in competition. Positive type of interaction. Both species are benefited. Commensalism, in which one species is benefited but the other is not harmed. And mutualism, that is, both are benefited. Neutral, neither benefited nor harmed. Neutralism. Types of biotic interactions. Amensalism. This is a negative association between two species in which one species harms or restricts the other species without itself being adversely affected or harmed by the presence of the other species. Organisms that secrete antibiotics and the species that get inhibited by the antibiotics are examples of amensalism. Another example, a large tree shades a small plant, retarding the growth of the small plant. However, small plant has no effect on the large tree. Predation. In this type of interaction, predator captures, kills, and eats an animal of another species called the prey. The predator naturally benefits from this relationship while the prey is harmed. Predators like leopards, leopards, tigers, and cheetahs use speed, teeth, and claws to hunt and kill their prey. Parasitism. In this type of interaction, one species is harmed and the other benefits. Parasitism involves parasite, usually a small sized organism, living in or on another living species called the host, from which the parasite gets its nourishment and often shelter. The parasite is benefited and the host is harmed. Many organisms like animal, bacteria, and viruses are parasites of plants and animals. Plants like dodder plant, cuscuta, and mistletoe, loranthus, are parasites that live on flowering plants. Tapeworm, roundworm, malarial parasites, many bacteria, fungi, and viruses are common parasites of humans. Competition. This is an interaction between two populations in which both species are harmed to some extent. Competition occurs when two population or species both need a vital resource that is in short supply. The vital resource could be food, water, shelter, nesting site, mates, or space. For instance, in some shallow South American lakes, visiting flamingos and resident fishes compete for their common food, the zooplankton in the lake. Commensalism. In this relationship, one of the species benefits while the other is neither harmed nor benefited. For example, suckerfish. Remora often attaches to a shark. This helps the remora get protection, a free ride, as well as meal from the leftover of the shark's meal. The shark does not, however, get any benefit, nor is it adversely affected by this association. Another example of commensalism is relationship between trees and the epiphytic plants. Epiphytes live on the surface of the other plants like ferns, mosses, and orchids and use the surface of trees for support and for obtaining sunlight and moisture. The trees gets no benefit from this relationship nor are they harmed. Similarly, cow dung provides food and shelter to dung beetles, but beetles have no effect on the cows. Mutualism. This is a close association between two species in which both the species benefit. For example, in pollination, mutualisms, the pollinator gets food, pollen, nectar, and the plant has its own pollen transferred to other flowers for cross fertilization reproduction. However, some mutualisms are so intimate that interacting species can no longer live without each other as they depend totally on each other to survive. So, close associations are called symbiosis. An example of such close mutualistic association is that of termite and their intestinal flagellates. Termites can eat wood but have no enzymes to digest it. However, their intestine contains certain flagellate protozoans that have the necessary enzymes to digest the cellulose of the wood eaten by termites and convert it into sugar. Neutralism. In this type of interaction, there is no net benefit or harm to either of the species. Perhaps in some interspecific interactions, the costs and the benefits experienced by each partner are exactly the same so that they sum up to zero. True neutralism is extremely unlikely and impossible to prove. An example of neutralism is an interaction between a rainbow trout and a dandelion living in the valley of the mountain, or cacti and tarantulas living in the desert area. Since true neutralism is rare or non existent, its usage is often extended to situations where interaction is merely insignificant or negligible. Ecosystem. What is ecosystem? The term ecosystem was coined by A. G. Tansley in 1935. Ecosystem is defined as a structural and functional unit of biosphere consisting of a community of living beings and the physical environment both interacting and exchanging materials between them. It includes plants, trees, animals, fish, birds, microorganisms, water, soil, and people. For example, a pond is a good example of an ecosystem. The components of both ecosystem and environment are same. Components of ecosystem: abiotic, non-living, and biotic, inorganic and organic, and physical in the abiotic, whereas in the biotic living, consumers, decomposers, and producers. Abiotic components: physical factors such as sunlight, temperature, rainfall, humidity, and pressure. Inorganic substances: carbon dioxide, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, sulfur, water, rock, soil, and other minerals. Organic substances: carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, and humic substances. Abiotic factors determine where and how well an organism exists in its environment. Even though these factors interact with each other, one single factor can limit the range of an organism. Organic compounds are the building blocks of living systems and therefore make a link between the biotic and abiotic components. Organic compound is formed from the inorganic compound after decomposition. Distribution of organisms in the environment is determined by solar energy. Rain is a major component of the water cycle and is responsible for depositing most of the fresh water on the earth. It provides suitable conditions for many types of ecosystems. Temperature is a factor which critically influences the survival of organisms, since the organisms can tolerate only a certain range of temperature and humidity. The land is covered by soil, and numerous variety of microbes, protozoa, fungi, and even small animals, invertebrate, thrive into it. Biotic components, producers, primary producers, autotrophs, self-nourishing. The producers are basically green plants and certain types of bacteria and algae. The green plants manufacture food for the entire ecosystem through the process of photosynthesis. Green plants are called autotrophs as they absorb water and nutrients from the soil, carbon dioxide from the air, and capture solar energy for this process. In other words, they synthesize carbohydrate from simple inorganic raw materials like carbon dioxide and water in the presence of sunlight by the process of photosynthesis on their own and supply indirectly to other non-producers. In the terrestrial ecosystem, producers basically are herbaceous and woody plants, whereas in the aquatic ecosystem, producers are various species of microscopic algae. Consumers, heterotrophs or phagotrophs, other nourishing. Consumers are the species which are incapable of producing their own food through photosynthesis. So they depend on organic food derived from plants, animals, or both. Hence, they are called heterotrophs and they consume food synthesized by autotrophs. Based on the food preferences, they can be grouped into two broad categories: macro consumers and micro consumers. Macro consumers feed on plants or animals or both and are categorized on the basis of their source of food. Herbivores are primary consumers who feed mainly on plants, for example, horse, cow, rabbits. Secondary consumers feed on primary consumers, for example, fox. Carnivores are tertiary consumers who feed on secondary consumers. For example, lions can eat fox and wolves. Omnivores are organisms which consume both plants and animals. For example, human, pig, sparrow, etc. Microorganisms, consumers. Microconsumers are saprotrophs, decomposers, or osmotrophs. They mainly consist of bacteria and fungi which obtain energy and nutrients by decomposing dead organic substances, detritus of plant and animal origins. The products of decomposition, such as inorganic nutrients, which are released in the ecosystem, are reused by producers and thus it is recycled. Earthworm and certain soil organisms, such as arthropods, feeds on detritus and help in the decomposition of organic matter and are called detritivores. Ecotone. It is a zone of a junction between two or more different ecosystems. The mangrove forests are an example of the ecotone between marine and terrestrial ecosystem. Some more examples of ecotone are grassland, estuary, and river bank. An ecotone may be narrow or quite wide. There exist the conditions that are intermediate to the adjacent ecosystems. Hence, it is a zone of tension. It is where two communities meet and integrate. Examples of ecotone. You can see in different ecosystem, one uh, converging point is ecotone, which is using the three ecosystems equal parts. Ecotone shows an increase in species composition of one incoming community and a simultaneous decrease in species of the other outgoing adjoining community. A well-developed ecotone has some organisms which are entirely different or unique to itself from that of the adjoining communities. Sometimes the species richness and the population density of some of the species is much greater in this zone than either community. This is called as the edge effect. For example, floodplain. A shift from terrestrial to the aquatic ecosystem has more species than adjoining ecosystems. Functions of the ecosystems. Ecosystems are complex dynamic systems. They perform certain following functions such as energy flow through food chain, nutrient cycling, biogeochemical cycles, ecological succession or ecosystem development, homeostasis or cybernetic or feedback control mechanisms. Energy flow. Energy flow. The basic force responsible for all metabolic activities is energy. The unidirectional flow of energy from producer to top consumers is called energy flow. Energy flows through the trophic levels from producers to subsequent trophic levels. There is a loss of some energy in the form of unusable heat at each trophic level. For example, energy used by organisms for respiration. Model of energy flow through an ecosystem. Sunlight, autotrophs, then herbivores, primary carnivores, secondary carnivores, and decomposers. You can see the as the energy flow from one system to the other level of the ecosystem, then there is a loss of energy. At every step in a food chain or web, the energy received by the organism is used to sustain itself and the leftover is passed on to the next trophic level. The interaction at trophic involves three important concepts, namely food chain, food web, ecological pyramids. Food chain. It represents a series of interaction between various species that starts with producers and ends with top carnivores. Transfer of food energy from green plants producers through a series of organisms with repeated eating and being eaten is called a food chain. Grasses, grasshopper, eaten by frog, frog eaten by snake, eaten by hawk or eagle. Each step in the food chain is called trophic level. In the above example, grasses are first and the eagle represents the fifth trophic level. During this process of transfer of energy, some energy is lost into the system as heat energy and is not available to the next trophic level. Therefore, the numbers of steps are limited in a chain to 4 or 5. Gross primary production. The total rate at which the radiant energy is stored by the process of photosynthesis in the green plants is called as gross primary production. This is also known as total photosynthesis or total assimilation. Net primary productivity. From the gross primary productivity, a part is utilized by the plants for its own metabolism. The remaining amount is stored by the plants as net primary production (NPP), which is available to consumers. Types of food chain. There are two types of food chains: grazing food chains, detritus food chains. Grazing food chains. It starts from the green plants that make food for herbivores and herbivores in turn for the carnivores. In the terrestrial ecosystem, grass, caterpillar, lizard, snake. In an aquatic ecosystem, phytoplankton, zooplankton, fishes, and pelicans. Detritus food chains. It starts from the dead organic matter to the detrivore organisms, which in turn make food for protozoan to carnivores, etc. Producers to detritus feeders to carnivores. Litter, earthworm, chicken, chicken to hawk or eagle. The distinction between these two food chains is the source of energy for the first level of consumers. In an ecosystem, the two chains are interconnected and make a Y-shaped food chain. Food web. Trophic levels in an ecosystem are not linear, rather, they are interconnected and make a food web. Thus, food web is a network interconnected food chains existing in an ecosystem. One animal may be a member of several different ecosystem chains. Food webs are more realistic models of energy flow through an ecosystem. It represents all possible transfers of energy and nutrients among the organisms in an ecosystem, whereas a food chain traces only one pathway of the food and energy transfer. An example of food web. You can see frog eaten by snake, whereas frog is eating the grass. Frog can be directly eaten by lion also. Eagle directly can attack lion sometimes. Snake is eaten by eagle. So this is such an example of food web. Ecological pyramids. Ecological pyramids are the graphic representations of trophic levels in an ecosystem. The producer of the food forms the base of the pyramid and the top carnivore forms the tip. In between, There exist other consumer trophic levels. The pyramid consists of numerous levels of horizontal bars depicting specific trophic levels, which are arranged sequentially from primary producer level through herbivore, carnivore, and omnivores. The total number of individuals at each trophic level in an ecosystem is represented by the length of each bar. There are the following three categories of ecological pyramids: pyramid of numbers, pyramid of biomass, and pyramid of energy or productivity. Pyramid of numbers. It deals with relationship between the number of primary producers and consumers which are on different levels. Structure of an ecosystem is not completely defined by a pyramid of numbers. Depending upon the size and biomass, the pyramid of numbers can be the following two types: upright, or inverted. Pyramid of numbers, which is upright. This pyramid indicates that the number of individuals is decreased from lower level to higher trophic level. For example, in grassland, the number of grasses is more than the number of herbivores that feed on them, and the number of herbivores is more than the number of carnivores. Pyramid of numbers inverted. In this pyramid, the number of individuals increases from lower trophic level to higher trophic level. A forest would have a small number of large producers, example, few numbers of big trees that feed many caterpillars and insects. Pyramid of biomass. This represents the total standing crop biomass at each trophic level. Standing crop biomass is the amount of the living matter at any given time. It is expressed as gram per unit area or kilocalories per unit area. In most of the terrestrial ecosystems, the pyramid of biomass is upright. However, in case of aquatic ecosystems, the pyramid of biomass may be inverted. For example, in a pond, the standing crop of phytoplankton, which is the major producers at any given point, will be lower than the mass of the heterotrophs, such as fish and insects. This is explained as the phytoplankton reproduce very quickly but have a much shorter individual lifespan. That is, they are rapidly replaced by new plants. Therefore, their total biomass at any given time is less than the biomass of herbivores supported by them. Pyramid of biomass. You can see the difference here. Upright, where it is grasses, then rabbits, rats, mice, etc., then snakes and birds. Inverted, the phytoplankton, then zooplankton, small fish and large fish. Pyramid of energy. In order to compare the functional roles of organisms in different trophic levels in an ecosystem, an energy pyramid is most suitable. This pyramid represents the total amount of energy at each trophic level. Energy is expressed in terms of rate, such as kilocalories per unit area or unit time, or calorie per unit area or unit time. An energy pyramid reflects the laws of thermodynamics, such as the conversion of solar energy to chemical energy and heat energy at each trophic level, and the loss of energy being depicted at each transfer level to another trophic level. Hence, the pyramid of energy is always upward with a large energy base at the bottom. What is a biogeochemical cycle? The elements or mineral nutrients are always in a cyclic manner. That is, elements circulate moving from one living, non-living to living and then back to the non-living components of the ecosystem in almost like a circular fashion. This recycling of the nutrients is called biogeochemical or nutrient cycle. It is essential for life and it is the vital function of the ecology of any region in any particular environment. To maintain its organism in a sustained manner, the nutrient cycle must be kept balanced and stable. The entire Earth or biosphere is a closed system. That is, nutrients are neither imported nor exported from the biosphere. The nutrients locked in the dead remains of organisms and released back into the soil by detritivores and decomposers. There are two important components of a biogeochemical cycle: reservoir pool and cycling pool. Reservoir pool is it is atmosphere or rock which stores large amounts of nutrients. Cycling pool are compartments of the cycle. They are relatively short storages of carbon in the form of plants and animals. Types of biogeochemical cycles. Based on the replacement period, a nutrient cycle is referred to as perfect cycle or imperfect cycle. A perfect nutrient cycle is one in which nutrients are replaced as soon as they are utilized. Most of the gaseous cycles, like nitrogen cycle, are generally considered as perfect cycles. In contrast, sedimentary cycles are considered relatively imperfect cycles because some nutrients are lost from the cycle and get locked into sediments and therefore are unavailable for immediate cycling. Based on the nature of the reservoir, there are the following types of cycles, namely gaseous cycle, sedimentary cycle. The name itself specifies what is the definition of each. Classification of the biogeochemical cycles: gaseous cycles, nitrogen and carbon cycle; sedimentary cycles, sulfur cycle and phosphorus cycle.